All right, we're gonna get rocking and rolling. Getting close to the end of our time in Education 533. It is that time to start doing some revisions and edits on our final project. Got Brody with us today. Had to do some dog sitting this week. Mom's on vacation. So yeah, with that, me and the dude are gonna go ahead and get into it. Had a great opportunity to meet with Ryan and Peggy this last week to talk about some improvements that we can make on our projects. It seems like we're all making pretty good use of our time and coming up with some projects that should be pretty awesome and make for some meaningful changes for our students. Right off the bat, we're going to go ahead and talk about some of the strengths that were mentioned by my peers when we had a chance to do our peer review. Ryan and Peggy were so supportive. They were very helpful in helping me see what I was not able to see. Right off the bat, I felt like mine was just incomplete. Felt like I haven't made a lot of progress. They actually felt that I made pretty good progress. So that was pretty cool. I feel like I'm my own worst critic. That's definitely starting to shine through as I get towards the end and start stressing about that final project. Both of them, they were able to make sense of the research design that I was going to employ, that being action mapping, for how to solve this problem of fitting all the learning that we need to do in the culinary classroom into the time constraints. Ryan actually mentioned that his teacher at his school has this happen all the time, where they are frequently running late, sending students to the next class later than intended. And so that kind of helped me, that helped reassure me that what I was doing is something that I'm not facing alone. This is something that teachers, specifically culinary teachers, I feel like run into quite often. So those were some of the strengths. It was really, really encouraging to hear that I am on the right track. As far as where I could potentially improve, they were not so familiar with action mapping, and they actually had me consider talking about what it is, who developed it, why it's important in this instructional design project. So that is something that I need to consider when I am forming my final presentation. I've kind of started working on that just a little bit, but I need to kind of clarify, maybe give its own slide or um, a section where I talk about the importance of action mapping in improving this certain instructional problem. Ryan was very helpful, and we discussed the implementation of a flipped classroom. He talked about how he has not seen this work very effectively in his own practice, but for something like culinary, students might actually be able to benefit from the flipped model. Whereas instead of taking a whole day to do a demonstration, which is eating into our time that we need throughout the semester, maybe have the students watch it the night before, because then you get to have high expectations for your students in that you get to know if they're actually going and doing what they're supposed to do, so then they can be ready at school, or if they are not going to be doing that. So there are some benefits. There's some pros and cons still. I kind of have some reservations to that model. I've never really been a teacher to do homework per se, but if it does happen and if it does work out that way, then that is something that I could definitely add to my model. And this is all just interesting information for me to consider. Ryan, super helpful. It was really good to get his insight and his expertise. Um, One thing that I do need to make more mention of in my presentation is the things that I'm learning along the way. And this was some feedback that both Ryan and Peggy agreed would be good for me. What am I learning? What am I realizing might be a good thing about what, like using the action mapping model versus what maybe is not working? Don't jump ship because we're already so far along. Stick with it, but talk about what could have gone better if you'd used a different model, and maybe just stick to one so you're not comparing it to a million different instructional design methods. As far, yeah, I'm sorry, could not help it. Sorry for the polishing pictures. I probably had way too much fun making this. As far as revising for my final submission, I feel like an area that I need to focus on is increasing the frequency of my citations based on the information that I am choosing to provide. And that is going to go with specifically citing Kathy Moore, the creator and developer of Action Mapping. And is also to provide evidence for the information that I am putting in there, in addition to the primary source of Action Mapping itself. talk a little bit more about why this is going to be the best solution for what I'm doing. Why might this be the best approach to take for my specific context versus something like ADDIE or other instructional design models. And I want to give some recognition to additional stakeholders that go beyond the students and myself. There's more people that are going to benefit from solving this problem. Examples of those stakeholders could be industry professionals. So the professionals that are going to be hiring these students that come out with industry recognized credentials, industry recognized skills for acquiring a job. They're going to benefit because these students are going to be ready to rock and roll, being that they do take a job in the culinary field. Other teachers, that was something that was recommended to me. I didn't even think about that. If I am having this improvement in my classroom, what happens in my classroom is going to affect what happens in other classrooms. So naturally, those teachers are also going to be some stakeholders that are critical to the process. I feel that peer feedback it's been limited. I haven't gotten to do much of this since I started my master's program, explicitly meeting with my peers, setting time aside to go over each other's work. Something that I wish I had more of. Not in this class, but in other courses. I've been pretty unsuccessful at trying to connect with people. For example, in another class right now, I'm doing a pretty big project. I've reached out, tried to get a hold of some people to maybe review their papers, see where we're at, kind of compare and contrast. Have not had much success. So having this structure as a part of the program was a huge benefit to me as somebody who is just trying to be a better teacher, trying to get better at what I do. I realized, and I mean, this is pretty obvious to some, but different teachers equals different pedagogies. In a nutshell, different teachers equals different teaching styles and strategies to be efficient teachers. And it's just really helpful when you consider the perspective of somebody who's not doing what you do every single day. I get in the habit of thinking I know what works just because I teach it every single day. But when you take a math teacher or a music teacher or an elementary teacher, considering that I'm secondary, and you use their perspective, man, we have a lot to learn from each other. And that's something that we should not lose track of. And last but not least, it really helped me realize the importance of evaluation and instructional design, specifically when thinking about models like ADDIE. The E has its own portion of that instructional design method. So overall, we can use each other to evaluate the quality of our work and determine if this is going to be a feasible option moving forward. That is all I've got for this presentation, and I'm just thankful I had a chance to work with my colleagues. So see you later.